Hello and thank you for joining us on the Capital Report on NTD Television. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Here's a look at some of today's top stories. Maryland and Virginia law enforcement are poised to secure the homes of Supreme Court justices. Protests by pro-abortion groups have been growing. The White House today condemned the violent attack over the weekend that was aimed at a Wisconsin-based ProLife group, but the administration is still calling for protesters to speak out peacefully. And the Senate this week will vote on a pro-abortion bill. We have the details. The White House today announces a plan to expand affordable internet. An estimated 48 million households will get high-speed internet for less than $30 per month. With the economy on the brink of a recession, how will we know when we actually get there? And how important is it for the U.S. to untangle itself from the Chinese economy? We'll take a look. Police in Maryland and Virginia are prepared to provide security at the homes of Supreme Court justices. Pro-abortion protesters have been gathering outside. 3 justices live in Maryland and another 3 live in Virginia. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan's office told the Epoch Times that the governor directed state law enforcement to work with local and federal partners. And a spokeswoman for Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin said that state police are monitoring protests to make sure that the justices are safe. The protests outside the justices' residence are not being dispersed. Pro-abortion groups organized a candlelight vigil outside of Justice Alito's house tonight. And now that the Senate is trying to ramp up security for the families of the justices, a bipartisan bill would allow the Supreme Court police to provide around-the-clock protection to their family members. The bill is expected to pass as early as tonight. The Reignited abortion debate here in D.C. has stirred up activists not only in Washington, but around the country. The White House today condemned an attack launched at a pro-life group over the weekend in Wisconsin. And the U.S. Senate is expected to vote on an abortion bill later this week. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the details.
A weekend of pro-abortion protests popped up in different states. One group in Wisconsin even set fire to a pro-life organization's office. The group spray-painted on the wall, "If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either." Today, the White House condemned the attack, but encouraged protesters to continue speaking out peacefully.
What we are here to call for is peaceful protest, for people not to resort to violence, to vandalism, or certainly intimidation of any kind.
All of this comes after a draft ruling was leaked last week, indicating that the Supreme Court may overturn the landmark abortion ruling Roe v. Wade. Democrats have ramped up their calls to take action in Congress to cement abortion laws.
To vote for codifying Roe v. Wade. We are not giving up. We will never give in, and we will keep fighting. And if the American people are paying attention, this issue will also be on the ballot in November.
And with midterm elections around the corner, will this issue be a top priority for voters?
The issues that would affect my voting would be the economy.
Just to make it and make sure I can provide for my family and have a home and education for my kids.
Just 2 out of 21 people said abortion access is on their minds as they head to the polls.
The next time I vote, one of the major issues that I'm considering is the reversal of the abortion ban.
While many pro-abortion advocates say abortion is about women's rights, one woman says there's more to it.
I've actually myself had abortions in my life. That was during a very dark time in my life. Like all these people that are against the overturn of this, do they know? Have they had one? Do they know what it feels like? I don't think that they do. So I do support the overturn of the Roe v. Wade.
The conservative majority court could overturn the ruling as early as next month, but congressional Democrats have another plan. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has teed up a vote for this Wednesday that would legalize abortion nationwide.
Melina, Democrats have a slim majority and won't be able to get this bill passed. So why are they pushing for a vote anyways?
That's right, Steve. Senate Democrats do not have those 10 Republican votes that are needed in order to pass this bill. So the reason they're holding this vote is to force senators to go on record to show exactly where they stand on abortion rights issues. Now, historically, there has been two Republican senators, Senator Collin and Senator Murkowski, who do support abortion rights, but they previously opposed a version of this very same bill that Democrats are trying to pass once again, and it's unclear how these two Republican senators will vote this time around. Now, even if Democrats were able to pass this alone, they probably wouldn't have the 50 Democrat votes needed, and that's because historically Senator Joe Manchin has been opposed to abortion rights. So with this vote coming later this week, it won't have any immediate effect. It won't have any effect at all because it's unlikely to pass. But Democrats are just using this simply as a messaging tool here on Capitol Hill. Steve, back to you.
Melina Wisecup reporting. For low-income households, the White House today announced a partnership with internet providers to lower the cost of internet. 20 internet providers have committed to the program. The administration says the plan will increase access to high-speed internet for 48 million households around the country.
High-speed internet is not a luxury any longer. It's a necessity.
Internet service fees for eligible families will be reduced by up to $30 a month through grant funding, and some won't have to pay at all.
And if you qualify, you're going to get a $30 credit per month toward your internet bill, which most folks will mean they get on for nothing. Look, zero.
As of 2018, about 85% of American households had access to broadband internet. Gas prices are once again on the rise, reaching record highs, and it's adding to inflation woes. AAA says that the national average for regular gasoline rose to about $4.32 per gallon today. That's a fraction of a penny shy of the all-time high, which was set on March 11th. At the nation's capital, the gas price is higher today than it has been in the past 7 years. AAA data shows gas costs are about 44 cents higher per gallon than they were 1 month ago in Washington, D.C. In another blow to the inflation outlook, diesel prices are also spiking. The national average hit another record of $5.54 per gallon. The volatility of the stock market has more experts signaling that a recession is on the horizon, if not already here. Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia sits on the Committee on Energy and Commerce. We had a chance to speak with him earlier. Congressman Buddy Carter, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you for having me.
Congressman, the Fed raised the interest rate by 0.5%. The market seemed to make a knee-jerk reaction up and then took a pretty serious decline. What do you make of all this?
Well, first of all, let's keep in mind that whenever the Federal Reserve increases the interest rate, obviously it hurts Americans. It makes borrowing money more expensive. It hurts the home buying industry. There's no question about that. But it also hurts government. Keep in mind that because of the size of our federal debt, a 0.5 point increase, the interest on that cost us $29 billion. Just like that, in no time, $29 billion in interest as a result of the 0.5 percentage point increase.
Congressman, when it comes to inflation, how sustainable is this, and what steps can be taken to ease these rising prices?
Well, first of all, it is not sustainable. We cannot. Keep in mind that inflation has gone up every month of this administration. Every month that Joe Biden has been in office, inflation has gone up. Now, he wants to blame it on Putin. He wants to blame it on big oil. He wants to blame it on COVID. But the truth is, it's the policies. It's the policies that are causing this. And it's going to be the policies that get this straightened out. And if we don't straighten this out, if we have a decrease in the economy and an increase in inflation, then we get stagflation, which I can remember back in the 70s that we had, and how awful that was for our whole economy. That's what we've got to avoid. But the truth is that elections have consequences and policies have consequences, and we are suffering the consequences of the Biden administration and the Democrats' policies now.
Congressman, there seems to be a divide among experts when it comes to whether or not we're entering into a recession. Some say it's inevitable, others say there's a way out. What is your take?
Well, certainly at this point, and with the market falling 1,000 points yesterday, it looks like a recession is on the way. I hope, of course, that that's not the case. I hope that we can avoid it, and I'm going to do everything I can to help us to do that. But look, we have got to get our finances in order in this country. I'm a member of the Budget Committee, and right now we are $30 trillion in debt. I tell the story, and I'm not exaggerating. I have a 6-year-old grandson. His first complete sentence when he was 3 years old, he looked at me and he said, "We're how much in debt?" And, you know, it's true. Here we are leaving our children, our grandchildren with $30 trillion in debt. This is intergenerational theft. We cannot do this. We have to cut up the credit cards in Washington, D.C. We've got to balance our budget. We've got to do something about our debt. And, you know, right now we're in the middle of the election season. All of us campaign on it. Everyone, Republicans, Democrats, say we need to balance the budget. We need to retire our debt. And then we get to Washington, D.C., we don't do anything about it. That's got to change. We've got to make difficult decisions. We've got to do something about our national debt.
Unfortunately, our economy is tied pretty tightly to the Chinese economy to a certain degree. So when the CCP locks down or takes measures, Americans and American businesses also suffer. Do you think it's important to reconsider the way we do business with China?
Well, let's keep in mind, and I always have to remind myself, China is not our competitor. They are not our adversary. They're our enemy. And we have to keep that in mind. But at the same time, you are absolutely correct and spot on. Our economies are tied together, whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not. And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to address those type of issues. We run a risk right now in this country of the dollar no longer being the reserve currency in the world. And if that happens, and if China takes over that title, we are in trouble, big time trouble. And this is imminent and something that we have got to deal with. China, what happens in China's economy when they lock down Shanghai or when they have a lockdown in a city, that's going to impact us. We all understand that. The world's economies are tied together, whether we like it or not.
Congressman Buddy Carter, thank you.
Thank you.
Should the discussion of widespread election fraud be a taboo subject? Well, according to filmmaker Dinesh D'Soouza, that is exactly how those who were involved in election fraud would want you to think. We take a look at D'Souza's latest documentary film, 2,000 Mules, and his attempt to prove widespread election irregularities. And a call from jail. January 6th detainee Jake Lang calls us from the jail where he's being detained at and describes what he calls inhumane treatment as he tells us he'll be locked up for 2 years without the right to a speedy trial. The U.S. is suspending tariffs on Ukrainian steel to help the country's economy. But how effective will this be? We'll take a look. Hello and welcome back to NTD's Capital Report. I'm your host, Steve Lance. In a new attempt to boost the Ukrainian economy, the U.S. is suspending its 25% tariffs on the country's steel for 1 year. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo announced the tariff rollback on Monday, saying that the U.S. can't just admire the Ukrainian people's spirit, but also needs to support one of the most important industries to Ukraine's economy. But it's unclear how much this will actually help. The U.S. is not a major importer of Ukrainian steel. The move comes after the European Commission last month proposed a 1-year suspension of import duties on all Ukrainian goods. Filmmaker Dinesh D'Soouza premiered his latest documentary film, 2,000 Mules, at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last week. The film attempts to explore the possibility that widespread election fraud took place during the 2020 presidential election. Many critics of election fraud say that fraud takes place at every election and that 2020 was no different, and that the fraud was not enough to move the needle in one direction or the other. We spoke to Dinesh D'Soouza at the premiere and asked him why he thinks his film might paint a different picture.
Because we've been hearing since November of 2020 about anomalies, Trump won the bellwether counties, how come he didn't win the election? Or the vote count had Trump way ahead, how did it change suddenly in the next morning? Or cases of episodic fraud, fraud over here, fraud over there. But there hasn't been, as far as I know, a demonstration of systematic fraud, organized, coordinated, of a magnitude big enough to swing the election.
D'Souza says his film is compelling because it uses state-of-the-art technology and video surveillance to show that election fraud took place on a scale large enough to tip the election.
This is not affidavits, talk to Mr. Smith. It's a combination of technological evidence, which is geo-tracking. That's your phone. And so that places the criminals at the scene of the crime. And then you have video evidence.
The film featured Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote and election intelligence expert Greg Phillips. Engelbrecht explained to us how they were able to extrapolate and compile their findings.
Well, I mean, the geospatial information is available in commercial markets. And because we own a technology company, we're familiar with the existence of the geospatial data and how to use it.
We asked what reactions they received after people watched the film.
From what we've heard from people that saw it on Monday night, we're getting all sorts of reactions from folks. Tears, anger, sort of sadness, just exasperation. People walking out with their mouths open like, what's going on? How could this have happened here in America?
Another piece of the 2020 election puzzle is the January 6th detainees, many of whom have been held without bail, raising questions over due process and the constitutionality of it all. We had a chance to speak to one of those detainees who called us from the Alexandria, Virginia jail where he is being held. Here's our interview with January 6th detainee, Jake Lang. Now, Jake, you're joining us from jail right now. I guess first would like to ask you where that is, and also, we're going to get into January 6th in a moment, but if you could walk us through that day and what brought you to the U.S. Capitol prior to.
Yeah, so I'm here in Alexandria, Virginia right now at a detention facility. I'm on 22-hour lockdown, solitary confinement in my cell, 22 hours a day. That's pretty much been the story. They've moved me around to a few different facilities, from D.C. Gulag to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Now I'm over here trying to just keep on jumbling me so I can't really get my bearings. And so, yeah, it's been, quite the journey these last 17 months. I've been illegally detained by my own country.
And Jake, while you've been in there, what has your treatment been like?
I mean, it's been horrendous. In some situations, I've even been assaulted by the guards for singing the national anthem. I got thrown up against the wall, punched in the gut at one point for singing the national anthem. Another time I got a whole can of pepper spray in my eyes for asking the guards for some mutual respect in the unit. I've seen, some horrendous things since I've been locked up, and it's just, it's just so sad to see in our own country the inside of the criminal justice system, and the prison system here is so corrupt and so bad. And then you double that with, the political persecution that's happening to the conservatives and the patriots, January 6th, people that stood up for our country that day, and it's like, it's a mess. It's a hurricane of tyranny.
Jake, I want to ask you, were you part of any organization that went to the Capitol specifically to overthrow the government on January 6th?
No, I'm not part of any, and I've never heard of any such organizations. All I've heard of is a bunch of brave Americans that stood up to support free and fair elections, used our constitutional right to freedom of speech, to have a redress of our grievances, and were assaulted and ambushed by the Capitol Police, and we decided to defend ourselves. And in my situation, as I was defending myself, Roseanne Boylan, 34-year-old amazing patriot, she died by the hands of the Capitol Police in my arms. And that she was unarmed. She was just using her First Amendment. She was just there to support our president, support the Constitution, and she died in my arms. And I actually was able to also defend myself and defend a couple other people. There's two men that came forward and signed court-signed affidavits claiming that I saved their life that day. And you can see those videos of me actually dragging lifeless, unconscious Philip Anderson out of the hands of the Capitol Police. They were trying to murder him as well. He almost died right beside Roseanne Boylan. And those videos are on j6truth.org.
Jake, you've described a pretty awful situation since you have been detained. No bail, some pretty horrendous conditions in treatment. You've obviously had a lot of time to ponder everything. Why do you think that you are in this situation right now?
I think that there is a absolute cabal, a plan to demonize the American conservative, to demonize the American patriot, and that they use this like they used the Rashtag fire in Russia to go after their political opponents. And now they have one thing, the Democrat Party, the liberals, have one thing they can lean back on and rely and say, this is why we're persecuting conservatives in this country, January 6th. And so I find myself in the middle of like a political pawn that the Democrats are using us to, they have nothing else to rely on to say, oh, domestic terrorism, this is that, and it wasn't even close to that kind of situation. They built up their narrative on a bed of lies, and, we've exposed those lies on j6truth.org, and so they're just clinging on to the only thing they have, praying that this will help them influence their midterm elections, but, it's actually done quite the opposite. We have a huge outpouring of support from the people who know the truth of January 6th, the millions upon millions of Americans across the country who support January 6ers, who say that, we were right for standing up, we were right for holding our ground, we were right for defending ourselves. And so it's actually become a point in the country where there's a massive kind of, fidelity change in that people who support the January 6ers are the true patriots in this country, and they know that, freedom isn't free, and sometimes, you got to stand up and do what's right.
Jake, is there any timetable for your trial? Where is the light at the end of the tunnel for you at this point?
Yeah, they're setting my trial for January 2023, so I'll be incarcerated for 2 years. There's no right to a speedy trial anymore in America. There's no right to religious services in prison. You can get your hair cut. The list goes on and on and on. They're using COVID as this blinder to just absolutely just desecrate the Bill of Rights. And we don't really have any rights in prison anymore, especially political prisoners like the January 6ers. So, yeah, I'm looking at 2 years until I go to trial, and they won't even give me bond. They're giving mass murderers and all these robbers and all these people across the country bonded. In every single situation, there's like a revolving door. But for January 6th political prisoners, over 50 of us are still being held without bond.
Jake Lang, thank you so much for joining us from an Alexandria, Virginia jail.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. God bless the audience, and, stay strong. The hope's not lost. The Constitution will be upheld. We'll make sure about it.
In an unannounced visit, First Lady Jill Biden met with Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska in western Ukraine for a surprise Mother's Day visit on Sunday.
I said just how much I saw the need to support the people of Ukraine.
President Biden did not make the trip. He participated in a virtual conference with G7 leaders and President Zelensky, according to the White House. The G7 agreed to new sanctions on Russia and will phase out or ban Russian oil imports and ban Western advertising on Russian state-controlled TV stations. The U.S. will put export controls on products that could bolster Russia's military capacity, and the U.S. will make it illegal for American accounting and management consulting firms to provide services to Russia. The U.S. also imposed around 2,600 visa restrictions on officials from Russia and Belarus. Sanctions come just one day before Russia's Victory Day, which celebrates the defeat of Nazi Germany during World War II. The Washington National Cathedral rang its bell 1,000 times to mourn the 1 million Americans who have died from the CCP virus. The bell tolls began at 6 p.m., each toll repeated every 6 seconds. The cathedral's bell toll ceremony began after the first 100,000 deaths were recorded in May of 2020. Every toll represents 1,000 people and those who grieve them. And that's all we have for you on NTD's Capital Report this evening. Don't forget to check out our Capital Report podcast, where you can catch our full interviews. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Have a great evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow.